Has Cooper Hummel secured a spot on Seattle's roster? And which Mariner is most likely to regress in 2023? We'll answer all that and more on tonight's episode of Locked On Mariners. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is Monday, March 13th, 2023. This is Ty and Colby for the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. The link, as well as our social accounts, is in the description below. It is Mailbag Monday, the show where we answer your Mariners questions. And just a heads up, for those that entered our Mariners ticket giveaway last week, we'll be announcing the winner on tomorrow's episode, so look forward to that. And now, Colby, we're recording a little bit later than we usually do. Do you want to tell the folks why that is and how that's probably going to continue here for the next week?
Yeah, I'm in Arizona. That's how that is. Down here for spring training. We got in on Friday evening, so leaving on Friday morning. So been going to some spring training games. Be heading to World Baseball Classic game tonight, kind of get a feel for how that's going. So schedule's a little weird. They start the games at 1. We usually record at noon. Ty doesn't wear the pants in his relationship, so he can't get his recording studio. Yeah. But no, it's a bad schedule right now. And obviously, again, I'm down here till Friday. Wednesday's probably going to be fairly normal, but I would guess tomorrow is going to come out late afternoon as well.
Yeah, look, she makes more money than I do, man. What do you want me to do?
She could do so much better.
I mean, true. All right, let's get into the questions. The first one comes from Milkshake. Which Mariners player would you say is the most likely to somewhat regress next year, and who, other than Julio, can the Mariners least afford less production from? So a little bit of a two-part question here. There's a couple of names that come to mind thinking about who is most likely to regress at least a little bit this year. Eugenio Suarez is someone that I go to a little bit, and I love Gino. Don't get me wrong here. And I don't think that he'll be bad. I don't think he'll regress to what he was, the last couple of years before this past season. But I think given, his struggles over those last couple of years, that should suggest that maybe this past year was a little bit of an outlier for him, but I still think that he could be a 115 WRC plus guy, maybe not a 130 plus WRC plus guy like he was this past year. But I think that qualifies as like a little bit of a regression, but overall, I think he's still going to be a valuable player for this team. Maybe regresses a little bit defensively as well, because he was pretty dang good there on the hot corner this past year. Anyone else come to mind for you on that front of the question?
No, I think it's probably Gino. I don't think he's going to fall off a cliff or anything, but I kind of doubt he's a 4-win player again. I think he's probably going to be closer to a 3-win guy. But he should still be a solid player. But obviously, you drop a win off of the WAR, I would say that counts as regression. So I think Gino's Gino's also one of the older guys on this team, which is weird to say because I think he's only 30. So, but he is on the older side when you look at this ball club. So I think Gino's kind of the prime candidate there.
So who can the Mariners least afford regression from? I mean, there's quite a few names. I mean, Gino is obviously one of them because he's kind of part of the whole driving force of your offense here. But yeah, outside of Julio, I would say Teoscar Hernandez, because you put really almost all of your eggs into Teoscar's basket this offseason. He's your biggest, offseason addition. He's supposed to elevate your offense in a major way. And if he doesn't, if you essentially just get Mitch Haniger level production out of him, maybe a few more games played, hopefully, fingers crossed. But if that's essentially what you get, I would think that's a little bit disappointing considering what Teoscar can be. Anyone else?
I think it's Teo, just because the Mariners lineup is kind of built on these two big bats at the top, and Teo and Julio. And then around them are a bunch of, good hitters, but not elite type of bats. They don't have that third guy. They're really kind of relying on Ty France taking another half step forward. They're counting on Cal Raleigh to take a half step forward.
Mhm.
They're counting on Colton Wong to kind of, be in the range of what he was last year. They don't have that guy. So unless, Jared Kelenic is going to hit 280, 350, 500, they really don't have that like third complementary or third like star in the middle of their lineup. They have a lot of complementary guys, but if Teo is kind of just okay,
Mhm.
then you're definitely going to need to go out and get another bat at the deadline. And when you kind of look at what the free agent market looks like, anybody with any kind of rental or anybody with any kind of club control is going to be extremely expensive. So
Mhm.
you really need Teo to have a really good year, especially if you're going to catch somebody like the Astros.
Yeah, you need Teoscar Hernandez to be at least a 125 WRC plus guy this year. And if
Yeah.
he's not, if he's more like 110, 115, somewhere in that range, it's not necessarily a failure, but it's a major
You're
disappointment.
you're putting a lot of pressure on Cal and Jared,
Yeah.
Ty France. You're really putting a lot of pressure on those guys to kind of outperform what we think they can do. And they might do it. Like there's a way where it works out fine, but if Teo's not hitting, then yeah, it's going to fall on those guys who, there's some question marks about how much those guys have left in the tank. So um, I think it's Teo probably because like even if it's like Cal Raleigh, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tom Murphy you feel pretty good about. So I think it's Teo because you just really don't have the outfield depth or the lineup depth to get a subpar season out of that guy.
Next question here comes from Mariners Apologist. We've been considered to be a Mariners apologist from time to time, according to twitter.com. Mariners Apologist asks, were you surprised at how little run Isaiah Campbell and Taylor Dollard got in spring training before getting optioned? Can we learn anything about how high/low the team is on a player based off their spring training appearances? So another kind of a two-parter question here. To answer the first part of your question, Dollard not so much, Campbell a little bit, yeah, because I mean we talked about Campbell. I think I made this statement on this show. Maybe it was our Patreon show, patreon.com/control the zone, folks. Check it out. That I thought that Campbell was going to be a pretty big part of this bullpen by season then, when we
Right.
look back on things. To not really see him get a ton of run here was a little bit surprising, and then to be optioned. Now, he can still appear in some games. They can still bring him over if they need bodies, if they need arms in camp. So we still might see him here before the end of March, but yeah, this was a little bit surprising, but the thing that you also have to keep in mind here is that Campbell is still not too far removed from a pretty serious injury. He hasn't thrown that many innings since returning overall. So he's definitely a guy that does need more time down in the minors. And I'm still pretty high on him and making an impact with this bullpen at some point this season, but maybe not as quick as maybe I once thought. But yeah, as for
Yeah.
Dollard, no, not really surprised whatsoever because he wasn't. I mean, Jerry DiPoto himself didn't, said that he didn't foresee him factoring into a competition here for the rotation. So really, what's the point at the end of the day?
Right. You put him down there, let him work on some things in bullpens and stuff like that. And yeah, he's probably like what, eighth in line for starts at this point. You obviously have your six, and then you have Bryce Miller is clearly ahead of him. So that would make him eight. You don't really need that guy. So
Right.
up in your camps, just get him down there, let him get some innings. There might be something that they're working on specifically. And then Campbell, I think it became pretty clear pretty quick that they're not ready to include him in the bullpen competition. Doesn't mean it won't
Right.
happen. It just means it's not going to happen in
Right
March.
now. Yeah. In terms of the second part of your question,
No.
and no, not really, especially not in this particular case. It's more so that if you see an early optioning like this, it's more just an indication that, hey, we don't think this guy is ready, and it's essentially a foregone conclusion that he's not going to break camp with the team. Let's just get him in a minor league camp. Let's get him ready for the season down there. Let's get him with the guys that he's going to be around, the coaches that he's going to be around. And that's really what that's about at the end of the day.
Yeah, you're just kind of giving more opportunities to the guys you think have a chance to make your team, because we're getting to that point of spring where guys need to go, 5-6 innings. The starters have to go 5 and 6 innings. You want the relievers to, get the last 2 outs of an inning and then go out back and get a third out in the 7th or whatever. So we're getting to that point, and the opportunities for these, I don't want to say fringe guys, but for these type of players to get into games is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller, especially once the guys from the WBC get back as well.
Right. All right. More questions on the way here in just a moment. But real quick, a reminder, this episode of Locked On Mariners is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then add your job in the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring so your network can help you find the right people to hire. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonmlb. That's linkedin.com/lockedonmlb to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen here on Mailbag Monday. You're not making us your first listen. Let's just be real about it. All right, let's get into these questions. Julio Eyes says Cooper Hummel seems to be a lock for the final roster spot, assuming Demo and Swags are healthy. Who else could take that last spot from him who's already at Mariners spring training, or who could the Mariners target in a trade? And he mentions Chris Flexen as being the Mariners' most likely trade chip. I agree with that. So starting with the first part here, Cooper Hummel, he seems to have locked in his spot on this roster. Still a lot of time in spring, but this guy keeps on hitting, and the competition for that final roster spot, or the final 2 roster spots on the Mariners bench, depending on how you feel about the rest of the roster, is thinning. Cade Marlowe suffered an oblique injury. We're going to be talking about him a little bit later on. So he's out now. Tommy LaStella's finally returned. Hasn't looked great since returning. Did have a double in the gap today. But overall, there's still questions about his health. So who knows on that front? Colin Moran hasn't looked particularly great, especially as of late. Cole Calhoun's had a good spring, but he's a non-roster invite. You don't necessarily need to force him onto your roster right now. Obviously, we don't know what his agreement is. Maybe he has an opt-out if he doesn't make the club out of spring. But yeah, there aren't a lot of players that come to mind here that make more sense for this roster than Cooper Hummel right now, especially if he's able to catch a little bit and then provide some value, or not really provide some value, but just be able to stand at a couple of other positions and just help out there if need be, just to allow for some positional flexibility, some lineup flexibility. But this guy, he keeps on hitting. He had a triple today right in front of your very own eyes. So what do you think about Hummel, who's been very impressive over the last week?
Yeah, he's going to kind of win it by default. Just the other guys who we thought maybe had a shot at this last roster spot, they're dropping like flies. And not only is Hummel producing, which doesn't really go into how the Mariners plan. Like Cooper Hummel's not making this roster because he's hitting 550, right? No. He's making this roster because the Mariners like the swing. They like the process. They like the flexibility. They think he can play a couple positions for him. That's why he's going to make this roster. But also because, Cade Marlowe's out for the next, 6 to 8 weeks, and Taylor Trammell's out for the next 6 to 8 weeks. And you kind of look around and, Tommy LaStella maybe makes the roster, maybe doesn't. But with Murphy, Haggerty, Moore already on the bench, and Pollock going to play a lot, then that kind of leaves one bench spot open, or DH spot open, so to speak. And kind of go down the list and who makes the most sense. Right now, it's Cooper Hummel. So, yeah, I think Hummel's probably going to be on this team unless they go out and acquire somebody.
Mhm.
But I think he's probably going to be on this team. I think he'll get a little bit of run early in the year, mostly as left field DH type, and then they'll see where they're at with him. Obviously,
Right.
they liked him when they acquired him, and we've looked at his minor league numbers. We know that he's done everything there is to do at the minor league level. He needs an opportunity. Maybe the Mariners give it to him, and maybe he's the next Mitch Haniger, or maybe he's the next Jake Bowers. R.I.P. Bowers Rangers, but
Yeah.
um, I think they're going to give him a shot to see, because there's just not a lot of other options. And if he doesn't produce, then I think we'll see, Trammell or Marlowe once they're back and healthy and able to produce.
Next question here comes from Felicia. Why haven't the Mariners signed Jurickson Profar since Tommy La Stella obviously isn't working out? Colby, this is something that we've talked about a couple times on our Patreon show. Again, patreon.com/control the zone. Funny how that works out. Profar, I'm confused about why Profar is not on a major league team right now. It's not a health issue. He was just playing for the Netherlands in the WBC. So that's not the problem here. He's coming off of a 2-win season, and obviously he's had a very inconsistent track record where 1 year he's good, 1 year he's god awful. He's almost unplayable, essentially. So I'm sure there's a bit of hesitancy there with teams, and there's a certain number that teams feel comfortable signing him at, and maybe he's just exceeded that. And let's keep in mind here, folks, we have to mention it. Scott Boras is his agent. So he's going to hang on and fight tooth and nail to the very end here for his guy to get him the best possible contract here. But I don't know, man. I feel like Profar waiting it out this long is just hurting himself in the end, is likely only going to land a 1-year deal. And then after having a late start to the spring, he's really only played in the WBC and practiced within, the Netherlands camp. And that's about it. It's possible that he gets off to a slow start here, and then if he's on a 1-year deal, that's going to impact his market next year. That's going to impact his ability to land a long-term deal next year. So I don't know why he hasn't signed, and that to me is a little bit of a red flag in terms of the Mariners pursuing him for me. So to answer your question, I don't know. This is a mystery that Colby and I have tried to solve over the last couple of weeks on our show, and we just can't really figure it out, other than he's just asking for too much money. But we don't know if that's actually it. We have no clue what's going on there.
Yeah, it feels like it has to be that he either wants multiple years, or he wants, $8 to $10 million, or that he wants some kind of guarantee of regular playing time. And the Mariners, they can't really offer that. I mean, they could offer the 8 to 10 million, but if he can't play 5 times, 6 times a week all season, then he might not be interested in that. And it's also possible the Mariners just don't like Jurickson Profar. I mean, we're not talking about like a no-brainer.
Right.
This guy should start on every single team, blah blah blah. We're talking about a pretty good player, but by no means somebody that you have to have on your roster. So maybe they just don't like Jurickson Profar. Maybe that's part of it. And his versatility is a little overstated. He's only played, aside from first base, he's only played a couple hundred innings in the infield over the last 3 or 4 years combined. So he's really just a left fielder without much power, and kind of average on base skills and average hit tools. So maybe they can't offer him that because they want to wait and see what Jared Kelenich's going to do, which is totally reasonable. So
Right.
I don't know why he's not here, but I do know the fact that nobody else seems to, want him right now probably speaks to the fact that he wants multiple years, or he wants a really high guarantee, or he wants like 600 plate appearance promise or something like that. And he's just, unfortunately, there seems to be one guy every year who misreads the market, and this year was Profar and his agent.
Yeah. And let's just be honest about it. Let's be upfront here. Let's just cut through the BS. Profar is the obvious fit here, but the Mariners when have the Mariners and Jerry DiPoto ever done the obvious thing? Right? I mean, like Luis Castillo, sure. Yeah. But like overall here, like in terms of just like, oh yeah, you could just go out and sign this guy. He's like the last remaining good free agent, really, at the end of the day. Just go sign him. He fits, right? On paper, yeah. But if the Mariners again, let's be real here. If the Mariners are going to add someone from the outside between now and opening day, it's going to be via trade. It's Jerry Dipoto, folks. You can guarantee that it's going to be via trade.
And to answer the second part of the last question, which we skipped, that trade will be Max Kepler.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I forgot to answer that part. But yeah, Max Kepler. Especially with the Marlowe injury and the Trammell injury, like, go get yourself an outfielder. Go get yourself a good outfielder. And you can still play Jared Kelenic all you want. You can have an outfield of Jared Kelenic, Julio Rodriguez, Max Kepler, which quite honestly might be the best defensive outfield in all of baseball.
It's giving the Cardinals a run for their money, that's for sure.
And then you have Teo DH primarily, and you can rotate the other outfielders through the DH spot. It works. It can work.
Yep.
All right. We got a few more questions to go over here in just a moment. But real quick, a reminder that this episode of Locked On Mariners is brought to you by Built Bar. The Built March Madness bracket is here, and we know you have a favorite bar or puff, so now's your time to make it count. Go to BuiltMarchMadness.com to vote for your favorite. And when you vote for your favorite bar or puff, you will be automatically entered into a drawing where 50 lucky Locked On listeners will get a free box of Built. Not only that, but one Locked On fan will win a 12-month subscription to Built to have Built's best bars or puffs delivered monthly straight to their door. You got to try Built. Built, the best protein bar ever. Seriously, they're so amazing you won't think they're good for you. And what makes Built bars and puffs so good? Well, for starters, they are all high in protein, low in sugar, and covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. Run to BuiltMarchMadness.com right now to vote for your favorite bar or puff and pick up a box while you're there. You can vote every day in March, so hop in and support your pick. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your, I don't know, come up with a number. Let us know in the comments below what number this listen is for you during your day here, because it certainly isn't your first here on Monday. All right. Next question comes from Roshan Bratt. If you could add one 2010s Mariner to the current Mariner team, who would it be? Who? I like this question a lot. This one is fun.
Nelson Cruz.
Yeah, 2015 Nelson Cruz is a really good answer. Plus, that DH is wide open on this roster. You put 2015 Nelson Cruz World Series.
Like the temptation might be to say Felix, and I don't think that's a bad answer. But you look at the Mariners rotation right now, and it's like, do I get like a specific year? Do I get like 2014 Felix, or do I get Felix in the totality of the 2010s? Because the last 3 years were god awful, whereas Cruz was still really good all throughout the 2010s. So I think the biggest need is a bat. You really need that middle of the order, just like crushing bat. And you know, Mariners Nelson Cruz was one of the best right-handed hitters I ever watched on a daily basis. So I'd probably go Nelly.
May I pose two alternatives?
You may not. Next question.
Well, I'm going to do it anyway. 2014 and 2016 Robinson Cano.
I feel fine about Wong.
I mean, yeah, but you could also DH Cano if you want.
I mean, I feel like you should answer in the spirit of the question, which is, you know, is Cano going to be okay DHing in his prime? Really?
Let's just talk about the numbers here. 298, 350, 533. He was almost a 7-win player in 2016, man.
Yeah, fine. If he's willing to DH, cool, because he's a lefty bat.
And he could also play some defense at the time, right? Like,
you know what?
Like, that can be valuable.
I'm changing my answer. Kyle Seager.
Oh, wow. That's quite the heel
2016 Kyle Seager.
2014 Cano as well. His first year in Seattle, 314, 382, 454, 137 WRC plus. That was a 5.6 F4 season for Cano. Dude was really good. It was really freaking
If we want to bend the rules and say that we could put guys anywhere we want, then I guess Cano probably has a pretty good, good case.
Cano plays some second. He DHs. Colton can,
because if there's one thing we know about Robinson Cano, he was thrilled to change positions in 2018 when the team needed him to. Thrilled.
Okay, you wouldn't move off of Colton Wong for prime Robinson Cano, for 7-win Robinson Cano?
I think Colton Wong's going to put up 7 wins this year, so I'm feeling pretty good about that.
Clip that Mariners mojo.
Just you wait. It's going to be really awkward for you when Colton Wong's starting the All-Star game this year.
All right.
We can make it happen, guys. Stuff the ballot box.
I guess we're already starting the bold prediction episode. Kevin here wants to know, Haggerty had a significant impact creating pressure on the base pass. Do you see the Mariners using him at multiple positions to get him in the lineup consistently? I don't think that he's going to get in the lineup consistently unless injuries happen. He's the 25th, 26th guy on the roster. Or, he's the fourth guy on the bench.
Why do you want him in the lineup consistently?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to see him against lefties, because, but I think really when, I think we'll see him probably 3-4 times a week, but mostly as a late game, sub, either pinch running, maybe defensive substitution, etc. But I think he probably only starts once a week with the way things are currently constructed.
I think, if he's getting more than 50 starts, based on what we've seen so far, I think something's gone pretty wrong. He's just not that guy. He's pretty good against lefties, didn't hit righties at all. There's not a lot of power. He's not like an elite left fielder or anything like that. He's serviceable out there. He still takes some bad reads, which not entirely his fault. He's, a natural infielder, but he also, really doesn't play shortstop. The Mariners clearly don't trust him to play shortstop. He plays mostly second. And in left or right in a corner, he doesn't have the power to profile there. So yeah, I think he'll get some run, and obviously they'll use him off the bench. But he should not be starting every day, and really you should limit his starts as much as you can to, specific matchups against left-handed pitching. And thankfully in the AL West, there is a lot of left-handed pitching. So you should still get some run, but you should not be trying to get Haggerty into the lineup with any consistency.
Yeah, I've defended Haggerty a lot, and I've defended Haggerty's spot on this roster, if I could speak English. But also, like, I do think that people get a little bit hung up on Haggerty during the win streak, the player that he was during the win streak, and a little bit after that, and think that's just who he is. It's not. I think he's a good player that can help. I think he's a good player to be the fourth guy on your bench and help, late in games and start here and there. But that's about it. That's the extent of what I want Sam Haggerty's role to be on a contending team, on a team that should have World Series aspirations. Because there is a role for Sam Haggerty there, but it's a small one.
Yeah.
Haggerty could start for a couple of teams in the league right now. Sure. But the point is that you're supposed to be a top 10 team in the league, and he could. Yeah.
Could he?
Have you looked at the Washington Nationals? You looked at the Pittsburgh Pirates? Have you looked at the Oakland Athletics? We just did.
Excuse me. The Pittsburgh Pirates have a very nice infield, so
I'm not saying that he needs to play infield for them.
But he does. If he's playing every day, he does.
So at the end of the day, what I'm trying to say though is that he's a good player to still have on the back end of your roster. If you're a team that has the ceiling that I think we all think the Mariners have heading into this year. All right, let's go to Daisy and the Dingo here, who says, would you be disappointed if the Mariners traded Chris Flexen to fill gaps in their farm system, like an infielder at the AA-ish level, rather than trading for major league pieces? This is very ambiguous. Like, what kind of...
Is the guy at the AA level Jake Shiner? Then yes, I would be upset.
Yeah.
Is the guy at the AA level Vidal Brujan? Then no, I'm fine with that. You know what I mean? It's not going to be that guy, but... Yeah. So it's a little ambiguous.
Yeah, it very much depends on, is this actually more than just a filler, minor league filler? Like, is it actually someone that I could legitimately see get on a path to the big leagues and help me out at the major league level or become a valuable trade asset,
Right.
If not, why are you trading Chris Flexen for that?
Yeah.
Like, there's no point in doing that.
You don't have to trade Chris Flexen.
Yeah, you don't.
Like, I know a lot of teams like, oh, the Mets just lost so-and-so, the Yankees just lost so-and-so. Trade them Flexen. Like, you don't have to. You use flexing out of the bullpen. You can do that until the right deal comes. You shouldn't force a deal for Chris Flexen. So if you don't think you're acquiring a guy who can help you in 2023 or at the very latest 2024, and I mean legitimately help you, not just like off the bench, then just keep Chris Flexen.
Yeah. And like if they were to do that, if they were to trade for just a Flexen for just a Jake Shiner type, I question the motives of that deal. Are you literally just trying to get the $8 million off of your books? Like, why?
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to turn around and spend that $8 million just like that. Like,
yeah.
But who are you going to spend the $8 million on?
I mean, like, I it would be easier to swallow if they did that, but they had also added a starter reliever, combo type. But
maybe they trade Isaiah Campbell and Taylor Dollard for Max Kepler, and then they flip Flexen for Jake Shiner, right? And then it's like, and I just pulled those names out. I don't think it'd cost that much, but maybe, I don't know. But just you added 9, but then you subtract 8. It's not that big of a deal. And again, as much as you don't like to play that game, Jerry does, because Jerry doesn't set the budget.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But I'm not trading him for org depth. Like, if I'm trading for a prospect, I think it has to be an impact one. And I don't think you can get an impact prospect for Chris Flexen. So kind of answers the question.
Yeah, or at least someone that has the path to being an impact prospect. Maybe they aren't necessarily that just yet, but they have the ceiling to be
Verlander
that.
Baroa.
Yeah, that's about as low as I would
Matt Brash.
aim. Yeah, that's about as low as I would aim on a Flexen deal, because again, it's just like Flexen actually has a role if you want him to have one. He can help. And look, your rotation, knock on wood here, I hope that it stays as remarkably healthy as it did last year, but the likelihood of that happening is not very high. So you probably are going to need Chris Flexen to make at least a couple of starts this year if we're just trying to assume and play things safe here. And we know that, Marco's going to be leaving during the month of April on the paternity list for the birth of his baby that's expected next month. So there's one potential start there already for Flexen that you could use, that Bryce Miller, Taylor Dollard, etc. Probably not going to be ready to make when that happens. So Flexen is very useful to the Mariners still. So if you do trade him, you better be sure that whatever you're getting back for him does help in some form or fashion, that it's actually a legitimate asset that you're adding. Or again, like Colby said, if you're just clearing the payroll, it better be because you're about to reinvest that money.
Right.
You can't just do it, wash your hands of Flex and wash your hands of the money, get really nothing for him, and then just call it good. You can't do that. That's unacceptable. All right, last question of the night comes from Dylan. Ignoring logistics, from what you've seen in the WBC so far, what country would you put an MLB expansion team in? I think the answer is pretty clearly Puerto Rico.
The US of A, baby.
Yeah, Canada.
Technically,
the team up there.
Technically, the US of A, because Puerto Rico is a territory.
There you go.
Not to get too political here, so I won't. But you guys can probably guess my feelings on Puerto Rico statehood. But anyways, regardless of that, Puerto Rico. That's a country that loves baseball. They are American, so like technically, my answer is America. But when I look at like Japan, which has a great love for baseball, they have their own professional league and it's wildly popular. Korea has their own professional league and it's wildly popular.
And their trophy is sick.
Oh, it's amazing. The giant sword or whatever it's called.
Yeah, it's so dope. That's dope.
I don't think, expansion to Europe is quite there yet. Maybe we're seeing some traction. Italy is starting to gain some traction. Great Britain got their first ever win today at the World Baseball Classic. So it's exciting to see the game expand in Europe as it is, but it's just not ready for a team. So to me, that leaves the Latin countries. So we're talking Venezuela, the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Colombia, Panama. And to me, the answer is obvious. It's Puerto Rico. I've been pitching funny because we've had this talk before, and I said if logistics weren't such a problem, my 2 expansion teams would be Puerto Rico and Montreal. But obviously logistics are a problem with having a major league team how you have to build the stadium, you have to build facilities, you have to build the infrastructure, and blah 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 blah. But since we're not taking that into consideration, to me the answer is Puerto Rico.
And it's more travel costs for all the
Yep.
teams, and we know how cheap major
I
league
mean,
owners are. So
how much more expensive is it really to go from like Tampa Bay to Puerto
if you
Rico?
told a major league owner that he'd have to spend one more extra dollar than he did the year past, he'd probably throw a fit. So
Yeah, probably.
yeah. Anyway, that's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty and Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Dane Gonzalez. That's TANEGNZLZ. And Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Mariners. That's one word, Locked On Mariners. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. And thank you again for making us your first listen. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On Fantasy Baseball. Win your league by listening to Matt and Dom every day as they bring you the best fantasy draft strategies. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts, just like us. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And with that, have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you tomorrow. Peace.